This is exciting. I'm expecting to see some beyond our regular cohort of locals from my own practice. Hi, and then I'm expecting to see people from the co-op who maybe I only see when I'm shopping. So I don't even know who all is going to be here, but I see a lot of friendly faces and some well-known names. So hi, everybody. So my idea for tonight, so I'm in my new office, can you tell? I'm just gonna give you a little tour. I have a great view of the wetlands, and across the wetlands, the Kagyasuka Buddhist temple. And out my other window, I have a great view of Grizzly, which has a setting sunlight on it now. It's really lovely. And so we're very happily ensconced in our new office. Invite anybody who wants to come visit us. So my plan for tonight is this is kind of an unusual topic for me to talk about, and but I'm excited to do it, and I actually learned a lot and thought of a particular focus I want to make with tonight's talk. So we're going to get started. We have from 6 to 8. I don't think we'll go that long. I'll probably even talk less than an hour myself. But we'll have lots of time for questions. And at that point, we'll open it up to everybody's mics and everybody's ability to ask questions, or if it gets a little crazy, we'll have everybody write their questions. So we're gonna get started with my PowerPoint. And I think Rachel picked this. I have to give credit where credit is due. A really wonderful image for not only the topic of perfect storm, which I wanted to write about in that newsletter, but really where we are now, and it conveys with it the concept that a perfect storm is perfect in one reason, because it's a storm. It's not like nuclear winter. It's not like it's going to be here forever. It's a storm that has a finite beginning and ending. And with this lovely image, we can see that it even leads us toward the light at the end of the tunnel, kind of. Thanks to the co-op we had things we wanted to talk about, and the co-op actually asked us. They said, we have a lot of people interested in this. Will you please talk about it? I said, great, love to. For those who don't know me, I'm Deborah Gordon. I am currently the only physician. I hope to have another one sometime next year at Northwest Memory Center, where we really want everybody's brain to be healthy, everybody's memory to work, whether that's their chief complaint or not. I think it underlies all our other health efforts. So we treat people with significant memory problems and people who have belly aches. Okay, it's really important whenever you're doing anything. I originally had this slide here with a map diagram of the Rogue Valley Mall, which, if you're local, is a place you may remember. We used to be able to go shopping, wandering around in and out of different shops. I assume it's still open, but I certainly haven't been there all year. And say, you have to start with where you are. But instead, I took a walk that afternoon, and I decided to start with where I am and where we are now, which is in the beginning of fall. So we still have a overarching branch of greenery around us, but unlike many places, we are full tilt into autumn in the sight of many trees. I see a liquid amber out the window now that is completely red and gold and yellow. And if anyone knows the names of these trees that grow in a line and turn pink, please let me know, because when I posted this picture today, because I fell in love with it, on Twitter and Facebook, everybody asked me what the trees are. And I said I didn't want to brave the barking dogs to go knock on the door. But this is where we're starting now. So remember, whatever else you're dealing with, and I'm going to talk about a little bit of what we've all been dealing with, take a moment as you're driving around, let that next car go ahead of you, and look around, because we really are, I believe, in the most beautiful month of Southern Oregon seasons, and we live in a beautiful place. But tonight we're on a journey together. This is also, of course, local. It's over kayaking off Rocky Point in Klamath Lake. And Klamath Lake has some problems, actually, which we'll talk about tonight. But not only to go on a journey do you have to know where you're going, but you have to have a clear, where you're starting from, but you have to have a clear view of where you're going and have some directional suggestions or inclinations about where you're going to go. So we're going to go on this journey together because we've all been through an amazing experience together. I think I'm speaking for more than just me. When July came, no thunderstorms. August came, no thunderstorms. California was ransacked by thunderstorms. And we're all thinking, oh my God, there but for the grace of the winds and the storms go we. They had 10,000 lightning strikes in one storm. We really had very, very little. But we knew as the summer was rattling on that the land around us was getting drier and drier. So when they forecast a windstorm, we all knew that if anything started, it would be a disaster. And of course, it was. So whatever extent you've managed to hold yourself together going through this shared experience, I want you to give yourself a pat on the back. You're here, you're showing up. You've probably shown up in hundreds of ways since that fire a month ago. A little bit more than a month ago. So it's the day before my brother's birthday. But we've been through a lot together, and we've all, to whatever extent, most of us have held it together. But where I want to start addressing this whole experience we've gone through together is actually this, the smoke. You know, you're in a day of smoke, or you're in a fire, you're actually fighting the fire or escaping it as it's surrounding you. And what do we have to deal with? So I've learned a little bit about breathing smoke from thinking about it and from going through these seasons over the last half dozen years. And we can comfort ourselves a little bit because forest fire smoke is mostly what you'd call natural gases. Carbon dioxide, which, you know, plants are supposed to absorb, not emit when they're burning. Carbon monoxide, which can be suffocating if you don't have some oxygen coming in pretty powerfully. Carbon monoxide is the best way to really suffocate somebody. That's the stuffed tailgate, tailpipe, and breathing the exhaust from your car. And there are also other gases to a lesser extent in forest fires. Nitrogen oxide and other things that are, because the forests are also a little bit the places where our lives have expanded into. So whatever's going to happen in our urban lives happens a little bit in the forest. You've heard the story of the canary in the coal mine. Years ago, when coal miners were even more unsafe than they are now, the only way they could tell that the oxygen levels in the mine were falling to perilously low levels was when the canary started to die. So something I realize that I think our first response to this smoke is to get through it, do what we have to do, and then we start feeling it in our eyes. And our eyes are canaries. They're telling us that the smoke is actually affecting our bodies, starting with our eyes, but going farther than that. Because breathing smoke, when you're breathing more than just a forest fire particularly, but also breathing urban smoke, there's natural gases and there are unnatural gases, and that's the nitrogen oxide and other things. You know, think of, you're having your lunch, you want to heat it up at the place you're working for lunch, and oh, they have a microwave, how handy. Do you heat it up in the plastic bag? No, you do not. You take it out and put it on a paper plate and microwave it. Nobody took the plastic out of the fire. We just all lived through. In addition to plastic, there are numbers of household and personal items that are made out of synthetics and fabrics that do not burn well, don't play well with fire. On top of that, and this actually becomes a little bit more chronic in the thought of urban smoke. What's the urban smoke that we breathe all the time? It's ozone, which is emissions from cars, but also industry. And even though we have less industry now here than we used to, do you know how many cars a day drive down the I-5 corridor that we live all around here in Southern Oregon? 30,000 cars. So the tailpipes of all those cars are in our beautiful little valley. And of course, the bad thing about a valley is it's a U-shaped tunnel for pollutants. So we have a lot of ozone here and other chemicals that come from urban life. When we're thinking about how smoke affects us, it's also reasonable to think about tobacco smoke. I hope that none of you are still cigarette smokers, but I'm sure some of you have been. And I'm sure some of you know and love some people who are still cigarette smokers. Cigarette smoke is most hazardous to the smoker. It's second most hazardous to the people around them, and that hazard can last for decades. When you smoke a cigarette, you emit a gas that shuttles particles of cadmium in it, and you can have cadmium toxicity that can last for eons. Well, really, that's not true. We don't live eons, decades, if you're not good at clearing it. And there's third-hand smoke. And this is relevant to forest fire and urban smoke as well, because when you are a cigarette smoker, I don't even know really how to do it. I've never really done it. Or whether you're walking through a smoky area, you get smoke on your clothing and on your hair. And so you can spread what's called third-hand smoke by just being around others. So the thing about smoke, in addition to these gases really that float in the air from smoke, there's also solid residue from the smoke, and it can be soot and ashes that we see on our cars in forest fire time, but it's also the particulate matter that they talk about in air pollution and in smoke. In smoke, the particulate matter is incredibly tiny. It's 2.5 microns. A red blood cell is 8 microns across. It's 1/10,000th of an inch. Is that right? I can't see it because I've got that in my way. Yeah, 1/10,000th of an inch. And the coronavirus particle, just to compare, is 20 to 40 times smaller than that. So here's a diagram of a human hair. Alyssa, put your thumb up if you actually see my pointer going on the hair. Good, okay, thank you. So this is the human hair. This is fine beach sand. If you string 5 beads across a human hair, that's the size of dust, pollen, mold. It's something you can actually kind of see. When I was in medical school, it was in my residency, I did a rotation with an allergist. He said, don't be afraid of the pollen you can see, be afraid of the pollen you can't see. So if in one of these 5 blue particles that you've strung across your human hair, you open it up and pack it with 4 tiny particles, that's the size of the particulate matter that arises from combustion, organic compounds, and this is the mold that does greater damage than the yellow pollen that our trees coat us with in the fall. So living in the Rogue Valley, and some of these are true if you're watching from outside of the Rogue Valley anywhere, unless you're really in a beautiful isolated part of the mountains, in which case you don't have good Wi-Fi and you're not watching this. But we have air pollution to deal with. It's ozone and exhaust fumes. We have second and third hand tobacco smoke. We do our best to ignore it, but you know, when people used to be in public establishments and would step outside to smoke. Of course, then the smoking was on the sidewalk. And when the skies get hazy, we have particulate matter in addition to the gases that are in the air. And our canaries in the Rogue Valley are our children. The Rogue Valley admits twice as many children for asthma to the hospital as does Portland or does the state as an average. We have really the dirtiest air in the state. So our children are our canaries saying, I don't care if you're not feeling anything, you're breathing it. So what should we do about it? Where should we go with that information? So of course in fire season, it's pretty easy. You know, like I'm supposed to be ready to evacuate. I have a 5-minute list. I have a 20-minute list. If somebody hasn't thought of making those lists, I suggest that you do for next year. And if you want some help, I've got some ideas because I picked up one from the internet and personalized it. And you check the air quality index. And you know what I mean by the air quality index. This is the one put out by the city of Ashland. And it's very interesting to check because you can't completely gauge yourself by what you see when you look out the window. So last Friday and last Friday night into Saturday morning, it was horrible. I was supposed to have an outdoor meeting with friends. We canceled it. No thought of doing it. Saturday morning, 6 o'clock, we get up. It's a nice day. Shall we go rowing? So I'm a member of the Rogue Rowing Club and we row out at Emigrant Lake, but we don't row when the particulate matter is at a hazardous level, which is over 100. So from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock in the morning, the air quality was hazardous, rowing was canceled, and that would be a good idea for you to cancel your outdoor activity too. So this is City of Ashland, Fire Department. I think I have a number of other quicker little apps on the phone, but this is more local to where we are. So you check the air quality index, and if it's over 100 and you can, you stay inside. And if you can't, this is where you wear an N95 mask because it does block particulate matter down to the particulates that will be in smoke. Doesn't completely block the coronavirus particles, but does help if the people around you are wearing even cloth masks to block that, what they exhale or cough out. Pay attention to your indoor air quality. Think how much more time most of us spent indoors the week of the fire. It is important to, if you've been outside, to take those clothes off at the door because that's the third-hand smoke that you're going to carry with you into the home where you want to relax and take a deep breath. You have the windows closed. It's always a good idea, forest fire season or not, to not wear your shoes inside. I don't know how many of you have ever traveled to Asia, but when I was on my way to Vietnam, we landed in the airport in Japan, New Year's Eve, and went to the guest house and walked in the door, and they greeted us just so enthusiastically and so warmly. And I walked right in, and they looked like I just killed them. And they said, stop, stop, stop. No, 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 no. You cannot wear your shoes into the building. So it's a good habit that I've adopted at home, and I hope you have too. You should have a good vacuum cleaner for your house because things will get in. Should grow plants because one of the things that gets in is carbon dioxide, and the plants will soak up the carbon dioxide, and some kind of air purifier, HEPA or other kind of air purifier. EPA has a guide, and that C at the end of that slide means absolutely nothing. One of the questions, and this is what I've looked at in previous fire seasons, what can we do to boost our inner body quality when we're faced with fire smoke? And the most commonly used supplement for this is N-acetylcysteine. It comes in capsules or tablets somewhere between 400 and 600 milligrams. Lots of people make it. It's not so important whose you buy. And bad fire season, I'll be taking 2 twice a day. And as it's calming down, I might just take 1 twice a day. Glutathione comes in 2 forms that's really absorbable, and that's the key with glutathione. So up till about 5 years ago, we would have said you cannot absorb oral glutathione. You have to take it by nasal spray or by IV. That's changed, and the two forms of glutathione that you can absorb by mouth are either liposomal glutathione, and there your dose is about 250 milligrams a day. The reduced dose is twice that to get the same amount of glutathione, and you can use that once or twice a day. That isn't so much, glutathione is interesting because it's helping. So this is not exactly just air quality. So when you think of what happens with air quality, you inhale toxins, you swallow toxins, either because of what you're eating or because you've inhaled and swallowed that air. And the glutathione's helping you get it out of your system. Vitamin C is, of course, always good. We've probably the first vitamin all of us took. Magnesium is an interesting supplement to take in a period of fire exposure because it particularly helps your lungs, helps your whole body relax, but it particularly helps your lungs relax so they don't seize up or overreact to the smoke. Alpha lipoic acid. And then there are a lot of kind of familiar detox supplements. Chlorella, and if you're going to get chlorella, here's the shout out to Klamath Lake. You had a good thing going for a long time. They were really the first place that was a major producer of outdoor blue-green algae. But between agricultural runoff and forest fire smoke, it is not recommended to get open air grown chlorella or blue-green algae, so that you look for a label that says glass-grown algae. Clay and charcoal, of course, also really help and can help you absorb things from your system. And once the air clears like it does now, go out and breathe fresh air. Even better than breathing it, which my lovely daughter is doing there, who's just relocated to Oregon, smart girl, is exercising. And that's me rowing on a fuller lake, taking advantage of clear air. So the things you can do, the actions, forget supplements. Supplements are great. They certainly have their purpose, but moment by moment, day by day, what do we do with ourselves to make our body as healthy as possible? So we breathe deeply and exercise in clean air, and we choose clean air to do that in. Get wet. Get wet in a variety of different ways. You can get your nose wet with a saline nasal spray, or if you're very coordinated, you can use a neti pot. An Epsom salts bath for your whole body can be very cleansing. Anything that makes you sweat is great. Your body is really skilled at getting these things out of your body that don't belong in there. And sweat is one of our most highly used mechanisms for getting toxins out of our body. And when you do sweat, take a soapy shower and get it off. There's been quite a lot of attention recently to the possibilities of hot and cold water, particularly alternating them. And there is good data to show that it increases your circulation, which is going to increase your sweat, increase your urine, increase everything that your body's doing to detoxify itself. So if you're feeling minimally brave, you take a nice long hot shower, turn it on cold for, oh my God, 15, can I do 30 seconds at the end? And if you're really, really brave, you go from a hot plunge to a cold plunge and back and forth. Drink lots of water. And here again is a place where temperature really matters. So cold can be really refreshing, but even on a hot day, if you are exposed to smoke or anything toxic, it's great to drink warm water. Warm water has two actions inside the body, just by virtue of its temperature. It makes peristalsis more likely to happen, so it has everything moving from mouth to the toilet bowl in a more effective and efficient way. And for someone who's chronically constipated, the simplest intervention they can use is to drink more hot water on a regular basis. But that same hot water also works in your lungs and helps the little tiny cilia in your lungs that are our only possible defense against some of the larger particles to get them out. So warm water will help your lungs extrude those particulate matter and do keep your digestion working. Yes, eat organic. I hope as much as possible you're able to eat organic, to choose organic foods. We currently have, we certainly have a wide variety of choices in this valley. I want to say two specific things about it. There is real toxicity to pesticides, and the most unappreciated but fastest growing epidemic associated with pesticides is Parkinson's disease. And there are specific pesticides and general categories of pesticides that do increase the risk for Parkinson's disease. And the other thing to say about eating organic and avoiding pesticides is that they accumulate. And even, I'm going to take any one of you I could take who's been eating organic for 20 years and test your urine. How could my urine have residues of pesticides? I haven't eaten that way for 20 years. Well, first of all, it will have residue of pesticides you ate 20 years ago, but also we're exposed to them whether you choose to eat that way or not. So you're minimizing your burden when you do buy organic. If you can't buy organic all the time, familiarize yourself with the Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 list. Avocados don't really matter if they're organic. First of all, they don't use many pesticides on them. And second of all, you definitely remove the peel from avocados. But things that do matter, it's important to get them organic.
Huh.
I'm hearing somebody saying something. Maybe that was me. Keep your digestion working. Go easy on the sugar, and stimulants and alcohol are transiently comforting in stressful times, but not for very long. But more than how your lung feels, more than whether you've been eating the right things, I want to ask sort of a deeper question, which is, how are you feeling through all this? It would be totally deceitful if anyone could say they lived through the Almeida fire and didn't feel at some point like there was a huge stress that appeared in their life. There was a huge stress that appeared in everybody's life. For some people, it was as threatening as an attacking lion. For others of us, it just was a constant background in our daily life. When you're stressed, when you're confronted with something that's really terrifying, your body goes into a stress response. And the point of a stress response is to make you highly focused on responding to the stress. So that means that your brain is completely alert, your muscles are ready to run, and frankly, everything else is shut down. All the mechanisms you have in your body for staying healthy the rest of your life, back burner. That's fine. As soon as the lion goes away, you chill, you walk to the village, you go, phew, glad I dodged a bullet with that one. But in our daily life and with the Almeida fire, we had a stress response that went on and on and on. And chronic stress responses can start wreaking havoc in ways throughout the body. You kind of name an organ system, and it is vulnerable to stress. And there's good research on PubMed, WebMD, linking all these different areas to the stress response, to a stress response becoming chronic. This is the stress. This is our current reality. And in our current reality, that stress takes up a corner of our screen, but shouldn't take up our whole screen. So how do you de-stress yourself? Well, you have to start out with asking yourself if you're stressed. This is a little bit like you can't win from this argument. If you're going through a big stress and you say, how are you? Someone asks you, how are you doing? Can I do anything for you? And you say, I'm fine. That's actually the first hallmark of stress. So I really want you to, when you're going through that, you don't have to share it with anybody else, but ask yourself how I'm doing. If you're feeling stressed, and we all went through that, there's lots of things you can do. You can play with your dog, you can dance. All those things have a lot of research for helping with stress. And I think the one that I've seen de-stress people the best in this most recent time is giving away kindness. So I've tried to embody that, whether it's thinking more favorable thoughts about the people in the world around me, doing generous things, giving a compliment, honoring people for what they're doing and what they're going through. Giving away kindness comes back and pats you on the back while you're doing it. Taking time for actual resting and relaxing, taking time for sleep. Can't underestimate the healing powers of downtime and sleep time when you're stressed. You can feed your brain in such a way that it will experience, that's really where the stress starts. And I could tell you the part of your brain where it starts, the limbic cortex, and spreads out to the rest of the body. So if you want your rest of your body to be de-stressed, your brain has to be de-stressed. So you're going to feed your brain nice diet of organic vegetables with, olive oil is your only oil, and you have some good healthy protein and lots of colorful fruits and vegetables. And then there are supplements that can really help de-stress your brain. And top of the list has to be magnesium. There's 3 magnesiums that I really like. So listen to see if any of these apply to you, and maybe this is the magnesium that should be in your medicine cabinet. Taurate is the magnesium for people who clench their jaws, tap their fingers, have heart palpitations, they're like wound up really tight. Citrate is middle of the road kind of magnesium. It's kind of calming, but it's very bowel activating. So people who seem really calm, but haven't gone to, haven't taken a poop in like a week, mag citrate should help them the most. And people who are really sensitive to magnesium, who get diarrhea no matter what they take, will benefit from the last one, magnesium L-threonate. It is also the only magnesium that crosses into the brain. Any of you have come to any of my brain talks, I've talked about how the brain sits inside a wonderful barrier so that to protect it, so that you walk by, always my example of this, you walk by the dryer. My new office is no longer by the laundromat, where they're using dryer sheets, and you inhale it, and it actually is toxic. Toxic molecules are going in your body. The blood-brain barrier protects those toxic molecules, protects your brain from those toxic molecules. Well, it protects your brain from about anything else you want to throw at it too. So if you want to feed your body, your brain, magnesium, because you're up at night, you're anxious, you're worried, you're ruminating, magnesium L-threonate is what you want. Lots of people manufacture it. Jarrow's probably the best, not expensive manufacturer of that. GABA is a neurotransmitter, and its precursor is L-theanine. One or both might work for you. It's particularly helpful for keeping people asleep at night and for calming repeated thoughts. Phosphatidylcholine helps your brain rebuild new brain cells. So it's something we don't think about very often, but our brain is constantly cleaning up. Oh my God, this brain cell got so stressed today, it got fried, it didn't have any good B vitamins. We're just taking it offline and putting it down. And tomorrow we'll build a new one, assuming the stress is gone and the supplies are better. And to build new brain cells, you need phosphatidylcholine or other kinds of choline. Your best sources of choline are egg yolks and liver. And if you don't like liver, eat pate. You know how Julia Child was supposed to say, if you don't like butter, if you're afraid of butter, use cream. So my phrase is, if you don't like liver, eat pate. People always take B vitamins for stress. Stress bees. And I've really seen a good idea do harm. So my favorite is always a good multivitamin. If you're feeling like you've been depleted because you haven't eaten well or taken care of yourself for a couple of weeks, you can take a double dose for a while, but you need real vitamin A. You need some vitamin E to use your B vitamins optimally. So use a good multivitamin. CBD is, of course, the new kid on the block. There are many manufacturers of good quality CBD oil. And the question I would always ask, so if I went into a dispensary here and said, I want a CBD oil for stress, we do have CBD receptors in our bodies, like we evolved with them. It's not natural, really, in any way. You want it to be full spectrum, which is, there are other compounds like CBD, CBG, other things like that. So you'd like the full spectrum. Full spectrum will also usually include a little bit of THC. That's the part that comes from marijuana. CBD is more the part that comes from hemp. The part that comes from marijuana is a thumbs up, thumbs down, depending on your nature. For me, it's a thumbs down. And I think it relates, if you're into genetics, with people who have variants in the COMT gene. But my variant is not that strong, so that may not be true. And organic, because you really are using the most essential part of the plant that would have been subjected to the most pesticides if they use pesticides. Adaptogenic herbs are wonderful. I don't even have to tell you what they are. I'm sure there's people listening who know more about adaptogenic herbs than I do, but the great thing about them, if you're taking an adaptogenic herb and you are just like exhausted, it can give you energy. And if you're wired, it can calm you down. They have a very flexible sphere of action, and they will suit themselves to what your needs are. That being said, any supplement can be good or bad for any individual, but generally you're pretty safe with adaptogenic herbs, Ayurvedic medicine, just taking an adaptogenic herb blend. Not on this list are prescription medicines for de-stressing, because all of them, they're addictive, not in the sense that you won't be able to stop taking them, but they have a rebound effect when their blood level wears off and you tend to need them again. And they are toxic to the brain. So the very organ that you're trying to soothe and restore bites the dust if you're using Xanax or Ativan, more than very rarely. Very rarely is fine. Let's not forget just going outside and taking a look at the blue sky, which I've said several times in this slideshow. And my daughter went to a Waldorf school, and Rudolf Steiner founded Waldorf schools. And one of the things he said is that everyone should live in a place where they have not only blue skies overhead, but they have the possibility on any given day that a bird could fly over their head. And we definitely live in that area. And then there are many things you can do that relate to breathing. If you ask me, I will send you this slide and you can just sync your breathing with this. Rachel, of course, my genius assistant, found it. I didn't find it. It's just breathing rhythmically in and out. Something like this is very useful for people who mastermind everything, for people who run the circus, for people who have irons in every fire and a task for every minute of the day. Just let somebody else tell you what to do for a few minutes and keep it simple. When you get tired of that, there are lots of other options. These are my two favorite, you can just plug in for 5 or 10 minute chill options. Brainwave is free. I think it just works on iPhone, but maybe they've expanded to Androids, I'm not sure. HeartMath is particularly good and has a lot of science to back it up. You purchase for 130 bucks a little ear tag that Bluetooths. I know Bluetooth's not great, but you're just gonna do it for 5 or 10 minutes. Mine actually is a line connected to my phone. And then you download a free app and it tells you, kind of like on the previous slide, breathe in, breathe out, great, breathe in, breathe out. And it gives you feedback. Oh, your breathing is wonderfully in harmony. And then it goes, oh, your mind seems to have wandered. Bring your breath back. to the diagram, and it has little expanding diagrams that expand and contract. So those are great. HeartMath has science. Binaural audio waves have science as well, where you don't have to do anything. You just listen to something that gives you something different in one ear than the other, and it's relaxing. But more than that, you might want to get into meditation. Insight Timer is a free web-based and smartphone-based app that has zillions of meditation programs. I was on there today to see kind of who the latest celebrities were who were recording meditation apps. Russell Brand is there if you like his voice. 10% Happier and Waking Up are apps that aspire to convey the historical legacy of meditation and its possible benefits to you. They are each cost around $100 a year, something like that. Both of them, you have free options or temporary. No, they have parts of their program that are completely free. I happen to like Waking Up, but I'm not as good as they think I am. Thank you for joining us again today. See you again tomorrow. I'm not always there tomorrow, but I still really like it. It's my favorite. Now the part where I really am going to ask for your help too, because how do we survive as a community? We're not going to pull through this well, and we want to pull through it well, unless we all help each other out. Remember when we used to fly on airplanes and the instructions would be to put your own oxygen mask on first. So the whole prior part of this talk is about putting on your own oxygen mask. And now this is the crowdsourcing part of it. I'm going to turn over to you a little bit. I have a few things to say. Now, after we put on our own oxygen mask, we think about some way to pay it forward. Now, I happen to be somebody who feels very busy and feels completely lacking in imagination. So I gave money and took the opportunity to talk to people who asked me from afar, my sister in Utah, what they can do. I asked them to donate money. The Road Federal Credit Union aspired to make $10,000, to match $10,000. I think they got $100,000. Unites, who I gave money to because they helped the migrant farm worker community, who were the Latinx community was the most displaced in this event. Some of the hardest stories. So pay it forward in some way, whatever way works for you. I know a lot of people who've volunteered. I've certainly read about stories of people who've rescued animals or gone to take custodial care of the animals at the expo where they were awaiting adoption. I just saw on Facebook today a gentleman who was asking for donations of coolers because he could convert a cooler into a cat Airbnb that he could put in Talent. It was on Arnos Drive that he was originally building them for cats to get shelter when they are still waiting for their owners to find them. What's the best way for all of us to expand our tribe? Because we want to be thinking about this whole valley, ourselves, the people we know personally who lost their homes, the people we don't know personally who lost their homes, and particularly the more unseen part of our community that supports us so substantially that lost their homes. And we're going to count on our community to be inspired. So we've already done a lot. So this is a picture from El Tapatio, that Mexican restaurant at the north end of Talent. And they just became a rescue center for the Latinx community. If you drove by there, you saw piles or racks of clothing, boxes of meals, and they were by, I think, almost every restaurant in Ashland, and I just don't know about Medford, offered free meals to people affected by the fire. So that's wonderful. And that has shut down as a location, but I know their efforts are continuing. Have you heard about these folks? These are, let me just look up their names because it was kind of unusual. Samaritan's Purse. These guys in white are from an organization called Samaritan's Purse. And they are international and they're Christian inspired, evangelical, but that's not their purpose. Their purpose is to help where help is needed. So they just finished work in Iowa, helping people clean up from the derecho storm. And they came out the Rogue Valley and began helping people do cleanup on their sites, or not so much cleanup as, so if that was your house that had burned down and you wanted to find your grandmother's token that you pretty sure survived the fire, be really great to have some of these people helping you sift through it. So they've been on hand, and people who are interested in volunteering in that kind of endeavor, that's being hosted by the New Life Church of the Nazarene, who are doing other volunteer activities as well. And this is one of my favorites. There's a woman named Karen Bates owns a shop called So Creative in Ashland. And at last count, they donated over 500 homemade quilts sent in from all over the country to people who needed them. And bedding and luggage were some of the things that were most needed in the beginning. I think the luggage just started accumulating the clothing they were given from maybe seasonal farm workers and the bedding they were going to get from So Creative, and take it to where their new home was. So you can't hang around me very long without hearing a story about one of my poultry. So this is, the picture on the left is our pet turkey, Daphne. We raised edible turkeys a few years ago, and we were so sad to harvest them, and we're pretty hardy. We do raise our own lambs, and somebody else does it, but we stand by. We know when an animal's raised for food, but turkeys are particularly charming creatures. So Daphne's a very charming turkey. And every day she flies out of her 1-acre coop where she's confined with the lambs and the chickens and the rooster, and looks for a warm, homey, green, friendly, hospitable place to lay her egg. That is not that place. She's scrunched in between the barbecue and a place where somebody might sit on a tiny piece of ground with no greenery at all. But you can see from the picture, she laid her egg anyway. And we are going to carry on, even though we're not in the scenario we might all like to be in. The world is starting its wonderful transition in the fall. This is a great time for a new beginning, as it is a winding down. I would really like, so that's just sort of me, but I'm gonna go back to that picture because really I don't have anything more to say. I would love to take questions, but I would love to hear from you. And so Rachel is also in the background here. Rachel, can you do people just unmute themselves? What do they do if somebody has a question or something wonderful to say about how we might help somebody you know? After
Yeah,
this?
I think the best way would be to just post a question in the chat box, which you can see at the bottom of your screen. You can click chat. So if you have any questions, Deborah can take a peek and answer them.
I'm going to stop sharing and then I'll just be sort of me. And you know what we might do if we don't have, so I don't see the chat box, Rachel. I know I should see it. Is there an ideal, I do have a question, and you know, I'm going to change to a different view so I can kind of see everybody. And somebody did just ask, and now I lost it. If, you know, on iPad, chat is in the upper right. I'm on an iPhone. Okay, I see the chat. From Deborah Josephson to everybody. Is there an ideal dosage of magnesium? Yes, there is an ideal dosage for you. So I don't know if you've ever been constipated, but that's when you really need a high dose of magnesium. If you have a tendency to go in the other direction, you need a very low dose of magnesium. So you have to play it by ear. And what I suggest people do with magnesium is start low and increase your dose maybe every day until you notice your bowels are getting a little bit loose, and then back off a little bit. And if that happens to you with your first dose of magnesium, stick to the magnesium L-threonate, because really it mostly does go into the brain and doesn't affect the bowels. A question from Rosie Goldsmith. Best supplements post-smoke effects for lungs, irregular heart rate, asthma, where the wildfire smoke magnified long-haul COVID-19 recovery. I'm sure you've all heard about the long haulers, the people that are having symptoms for months after they've supposedly been resolved of their COVID acute illnesses. I would start on that. So what that has been likened to in the medical literature, addressing it now, you know, one of the best team efforts, I've been in medicine for, if I tell you how long, you'll know how old I am, 40 years. One of the best group efforts in medicine is being an intern. You're with other interns. The second best group effort in medicine has been going through the coronavirus crisis together, because it's constantly crowdsourced. So what we're thinking about long haulers these days is to start off thinking of it as PTSD. So there are many different things you can do for PTSD. Heart math and binaural brain waves are two methods you can use to address PTSD. That is a place where there are some drugs. Propranolol is an anti-anxiety drug. An anti-hypertensive drug is also helpful for nightmares after PTSD, but really focusing on the cognitive improvement. And I would say that the irregular heart rate, I would use the magnesium taurate for that. And the lungs, that's really a good place to have the glutathione. And I'd go all the way to the liposomal glutathione because it's the most effective. And there are different ways to get inhaled and intravenous glutathione. And that would be for issues that are that challenging. I would partner up with a functional medicine doctor. There's a few in the Valley who can help you with that. Joyce Ward volunteered another place we can help. One way to donate to the undocumented farm workers here is through Our Family Farm. So Joyce, I think you mean that's the organization that farmed when we passed like labeling of organic or something many years ago. But Our Family Farms and Unite and even United Way, really caring about donating to the undocumented farm workers. You know, one of the things I would have us all bear in mind is that we're going to face some decisions as we rebuild, and we have to do it carefully and wisely, but I think we need a lot more low-income housing, right? Because all these people have been living in crowded trailer parks or mobile home areas, and we need to help figure out ways that we can have permanent housing that doesn't go up in smoke, because this isn't a one-time event. Somebody suggested so from Linda, she took magnesium something to prevent leg cramps. I get if I don't take it. Should I try switching to L-threonate, and will that heal nerve issues, cramps like glycinate? Oh, that's what she's taking. She takes magnesium glycinate to heal leg cramps. You know what the best? There is one, hi Linda, I see you. There is one great remedy for leg cramps. So I was at a medical conference one year and they were peddling, vendors, official vendor stand, and they said, would you like to try some topical magnesium? And I thought, that stuff doesn't work. Sure, let me try it on this eye twitch that I've had for about a month. Gone. One application. There is nothing that works better for cramps and twitches than topical magnesium. So Epsom salts is the big whole body, big arduous task way to do it. But you can buy and you can actually make topical magnesium oil, spray, rub it on. It's great. When you have leg cramps or foot cramps and you've taken tons of magnesium that night, it may be in your bloodstream, but when you get a cramp in your muscles, your blood vessels cramp down as well, and you're not going to get it in there. Also, those blood vessels are really small and you want to get a lot of magnesium there. Topical, hands down, the best thing to do. Susan Bizot, who has been a wonderful public health advocate for this valley, suggests magnesium malate. So there's a zillion magnesiums, not a zillion, but probably a dozen that I didn't mention, but in the interest of efficiency. But magnesium malate is particularly good if for somebody who has chronic fatigue. So they have chronic or fibromyalgia, chronic muscle aches. Magnesium malate is the one that is supposed to be the most helpful. Northwest Seasonal Workers in Medford for donations. Rosie's asking, is anyone still taking clothing donations in the Rogue Valley? And I think people kind of maxed out with clothing, but if anybody knows, please add it to the chat box. And Leah just joined us. Hi, Leah. A couple pages. Maybe I can go, maybe you put in your, no. You know, I am always hidden when I'm on a Zoom call. Part of it's because I have lousy Wi-Fi at my house. So if I actually people get to see me, I lose the whole Zoom event. But I'm also just shy and who knows what I might be doing. But anyway, hi everybody that I get to see. It is nice to see people when you're giving a Zoom talk. So Leah's asking a really good question that is pertinent that I did not address, which is vitamin D. How much during this period? And kind of like magnesium, your vitamin D dose is up to you. Well, how do I know if I take too much or too little? You have to go get a blood test. So particularly as we're approaching we've lost the sun. So in this valley, you can get vitamin D from the sun May, June, July, and August before the age of 55. What? The older you get, the less vitamin D your skin is able to make with sun exposure. So the more likely you're going to need to take vitamin D on a year-round basis and not particularly need to adjust it to take more in the winter and less in the summer. Because as you get older, you're just not absorbing it very much through your skin. Typically, I think in this valley, if you are over 55 and you're just going to take it all the time, kind of 4,000 to 6,000 international units, but you have to make yourself honest by actually getting that test and seeing what it is. And testing at this time, if you've not been taking it all summer, is you were probably higher at the beginning of the summer, even if you only negligibly increased it over the summer. So this is a good monitor for where you've been. I think that's the questions. Hi, Darcy. I haven't seen you in a long time. I'm not seeing you now, but I see your name. It's nice. Here's somebody, I'm not going to say your name because you're saying you did have COVID. You can tell me if you want to add that with symptoms for 6 months. For the heart palpitations, PVCs, a retired friend cardiologist recommended, oh my goodness, kind of what we've just been talking about for this whole time. Get outside, look at the view, sit in awe. So that's addressing the PTSD part of COVID. So great. A question, cautions to not overdose on vitamin D. It is important to check your levels. And I would suggest that anyone taking more than 2,000 international units of vitamin D, so people in Los Angeles maybe can get away with that. But at this latitude, most people to maintain a healthy level need to take 4,000. You need to add to that caution to know that you're not getting up to 100. And vitamin K2, approximately 100 milliequivalents for every extra 2,000 units of vitamin D you take. So vitamin D does many things. It helps your body absorb calcium. And if you've got a good level of vitamin D, you don't need to drink dairy to get calcium. You really can get it from broccoli and spinach if you had a good vitamin D level. But then you've absorbed the calcium, and what do you want it to do? Do you want it to line your cardiac arteries? Do you want it to create inflammation in your tendons? Or do you want to have it go to your bones, which, like your brain, are constantly undoing the parts that don't work and rebuilding them? We're not as good at it as we get older, but we're still doing it to some extent. And that's when it's more important than ever, if you are over 50, to supplement your vitamin D with vitamin K2, so it does go to your bones. Are there any supplements that we should take all year round and not just during smoke season? So I think, Susan, I see your comment, I'll answer it. I think everyone should be on a multivitamin, and everybody's answer to your question is different. If you have a strong family history of Alzheimer's disease and you have the gene, if you have an early diagnosis of MS, if you have, had a cancer in your past, it's really different. So the supplements that I take all year long are a really good multivitamin. I take a supplement called resveratrol, which is a combination of resveratrol and niacinamide. There's a book called Healthy Aging by David Sinclair, and he summarizes all the research about healthy aging. And healthy aging really boils down to not just genes that are going to have you live a long time, but genes that keep renewing themselves, like I say, our brain wants to and our bones want to, by keeping our telomeres, the endings on part of our chromosomes, long and healthy. So I take resveratrol to keep my telomeres healthy. I do take vitamin D. I take fish oil. You can eat enough fish to have healthy levels of fish oil in your system, and you might get mercury toxicity even if you're only eating wild-caught salmon. So, it really goes on beyond that to what is your particular need and what does your dog want, Anne? Play with dogs, don't forget about that. The person with COVID says, it's not just the PTSD, though that is important, but there's a huge inflammatory response with COVID, can affect any organ. And I would say yes, 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 in complete agreement. When there's PTSD, no matter what the cause, there's a huge inflammatory response that affects every organ, whether you, so one of the things that we treat frequently when we're working with brain issues is mold toxicity. So anyone's been exposed to mold, 4 people walk into a moldy bar, only one of them is going to actually inhale and have trouble getting rid of the mold. They're going to have trouble getting rid of the mold in every building they go into, and maybe, it's their bathroom and the place they work. So they're going to build up mold toxicity. They're going to have inflammation everywhere. And even though they do not have PTSD, one of the part of the brain that would respond to the lion responds to the brain that way, the limbic system. And so de-stressing, they didn't have a physical or emotional stress that they perceived. They inhaled something that was toxic to them. And a good way to help mitigate that, do all the work you can with the mold. But if it doesn't respond promptly to treatment, you give them a little bit of retraining for their limbic system, which can be heart math, binaural brain rhythms. There's half a dozen other ways to do it. Joyce asked, and then I'll answer the Rachel answered Joyce. That's good. From Diane to everyone, any concerns with taking NAD? So the concern is really, it's the brain baby. Everybody in Silicon Valley is taking it. It's the niacinamide in resveratrol. And I'm not aware of any downsides to taking it, but I am aware that it's hotly debated what's the best way to take it. In my experience, and I get these supplements at a somewhat of a discount, it's an expensive supplement. I'm not going to overtake it. And then life, of course, has you only doing things 90% of the time. Diane's concern is that it's cancer causing. I am not, so the part of it that would be cancer causing is increasing genetic activity. So anything that causes a gene and a chromosome to be healthy can cause a cell to stay healthy and replicate. So there's other ways you have to tame that by not having all your other cells getting a healthy message. So you tame that cell going astray. My belief is not that, oh my God, she has a genetic mutation and that's why she got cancer. I must not, that's why I didn't. The BRCA gene has been fairly constant in our population for 100 years. Breast cancer rates are going way up and affecting younger people. It's not the genes, it's the environment and how you relate to it. So that's kind of what I would say about the niacinamide, that it is, I don't think cancer causing if you're doing it in a program of whole healthness. Rosie asked, is resveratrol the same as resveratrol? So resveratrol is the supplement made from grapes. So you either have to eat a truckload of grapes, a case of red wine, or 500 milligrams of resveratrol, your choice. And it's not the same. So resveratrol has resveratrol and niacinamide paired together. One supplement you take twice a day. One of my patients, I advised to take it, and she says, I am really strapped with this pandemic. I can't take it. I said, take it every 4 months for a month. Go through one bottle twice a year. There's, don't let, well, I know I'm going to mess this up. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good, or, right. Someone said that even IV NAD was extraordinarily expensive, but IVs in general are more expensive. So this is, I think it's a good supplement. I think it has good science behind it. If you have any fears about it, it might be better to just take one bottle 3 times spread out over the year. I think one bottle will be a month's worth. And then you're abating it a little bit, but a little bit you're tuning up your telomeres. So you could always do it that way with a supplement that is either too expensive for you or you have some reservations about. Everything I say is my current knowledge at the time, and I do my best to keep up on what the literature is and know that many of these are controversial. On the way here today, NPR had a story about peptides, and peptides are the new darling in the functional medicine world. They're being heavily scrutinized by the FDA, who's coming down in general on compounding pharmacies. We're very lucky in our area to have some very good compounding pharmacies. The one that they actually interviewed on NPR was one I knew of. It's not in California, but doctors I know in California use it. And peptides, are they good or are they hazardous? They were specifically criticizing peptides because they are touted as a mitigator for the severity of COVID. This is a very tricky area. I am definitely not going to go on Facebook and the local news saying I have a cure for COVID, but I have some knowledge about how our bodies respond to viral illness and what we can do to be better than that. And some of the things we found out over these months of confronting the coronavirus should be common knowledge. Everybody should know that your vitamin D level should be above 30 nanograms per milliliter. Conventional doctor idea, 40, my idea, not above 80, everyone's idea, to resist COVID. That doesn't mean it's going to prevent it or you should feel guilty if you do get COVID, if you did do vitamin D, but don't you want to do every little bit that helps? Someone's asked me if I'm at all familiar with Sandra Kaufman and her simplifying of anti-aging supplements. And no, I'm not, but I will look her up. The supplements can be staggering in some situations, and I would love to find some way of getting somebody's dozen supplements and easily made into a powder, dissolvable liquid, something for them that would be easier to take, but to do that on a case-by-case basis, which is how supplements are really recommended, is prohibitively expensive. So, but thank you, Sandy, for the suggestion of Sandra Kaufman, and I will look her up. Did anybody have an idea as to whether any place in the valley, thank you for that reference there, any place in the valley that is still accepting clothing? You know, one of the things I kind of glossed over when I was talking about food, but I was intending to bring it up tonight because of what I did on the way here. So this is the first time I think I've been away from home after dark since March. And I thought, oh, and it's also approaching my bedtime, which is in about an hour and a half. How am I going to stay awake? So I made myself what I usually do when I'm giving a talk, which is had some broth with some collagen, so I felt a little bit satiated, and some MCT powder in it, so it helped my brain make ketones over the time of being at the Zoom meeting. And I threw in, because of my thinking from preparing the talk, a little handful of parsley and a little handful of cilantro. I cannot underestimate the great contribution to our health that we can derive from green plants that we can eat, particularly the leafy ones, whether it's a tiny little leaf like parsley or cilantro, or a big leaf like kale, or a bunchy leaf like broccoli. Green food is really valuable, and it's really great if you can get it organic. David reminded us that spendy and cumbersome as supplements get, meditative breathing is free. And really, if there were one activity you could do to lengthen your life, make it two. The first one would be smart exercise, and I could talk about that for an hour. And the other one would be some form of meditative breathing. Actual meditation, practiced in some way, is described in some of those apps to really enhance brain power, or really focusing on the breathing, which will power the brain, but will also power and soothe the brain, the body, the heart. Karen, thank you. Living Waters, a church in Medford, whoever asked about clothes, is creating a long-term resource with clothing. Must be clean and in good condition that you would give a friend, and ideally if it's bagged in similar sizes. And you know, one of the things a friend of mine did was she went to some place to volunteer, and they had too many volunteers, they couldn't use her. So she just said, well, I could give you just, you know, $100 today. And she says, wait a minute. And she drove to Walmart or someplace like that and bought $100 worth of underwear and socks, and, you know, nicely packaged and brand new. That is what people like. So, do I care whether the parsley, cilantro, kale is cooked or raw? Not for its benefit, but kale and broccoli are in the cruciferous family. And if you at all have a tendency to hypothyroidism, you should minimize your raw cruciferous vegetables. So you're at a party and they have raw broccoli and cauliflower, eat the dip, eat the veggies, that's fine, but just not on a regular basis having kale, cabbage, I love coleslaw, not very often, broccoli or cauliflower raw. thank you for everybody that was here and helped the ending of this talk be such a great group effort. I really appreciate that. We can be reached at northwestmemorycenter.com. There's a website. It has access to our email info@. So if you have another question that you didn't get to ask tonight, or something that, oh God, Deborah should know this, these are these great people, I will publish any additional great resources we need for community rebuilding that anybody gets to me in the next week or so. And we're doing another talk in November. And that's more one up my normal ballywick, which is something to do with I either have the gene or have the parent who has Alzheimer's. What do I do? So thank you all and good night. Have a great evening.